Oh, starting in the vagueness of centuries past, while humans prowled the lands, people could go wherever they wanted, whenever they pleased, restricted only by where they could physically go. Then, of course, our need for food and the invention of farming changed the landscape quite a bit. Villages sprung up, and suddenly there were places to actually go. Gone were the random rambles to nowhere, and here came the walks between villages. Of course, you could still pretty much go whichever way you wanted, but efficiency dictates the shortest, most leisurely paths. These are called desire lines. They spring up all over the place. If ever you've seen a muddy trail over some grass, it's not the official path, that's a desire line. Like this one here. Some of these early pathways date back as far as 5000 BC and link to Neolithic encampments. Others are Roman in origin. Most of the early ones are Anglo-Saxon. Not so much built, but worn into the ground by centuries of travel. Because they weren't owned by any one person and nobody really built them, they fell into common law, becoming paths for everyone to use. Most of the surviving paths are hard to date as a result of nobody writing this down. So the best way to date them is to date the villages that the path runs between. This usually gives you some idea, and villages mentioned in the Doomsday Book are over 1,000 years old. So there's that. Historically, land would be owned by a manor, like this one, which is the ruins of, and the commoners were allowed to farm on the common land. Each peasant family would be allotted an area, but that wasn't always the case. This changed during the 16th century when the Enclosure Act redistributed the lands and put solid boundaries between who could farm where, and under such enclosures land is deeded, restricting the farming use to one person as opposed to having land available for anyone to use. Ignoring the social and economic impacts of this, it also changed the way commoners got around. In essence, it was the enclosures that created the need for public paths. These new footpaths were the traditional paths, designated under common law as public. In other words, they were unownable, left specifically for walking/travel. The creation of the public bridleways came later, in the 1968 Countryside Act, and by 2000 the Crow Laws came in, which gave people the right to roam on all common land. But this is getting away from the topic at hand. The big question now is, why are some public footpaths grouped into long-distance walks? And why are some official national trails, while others left as novelties? In England and Wales there are 15 national trails. Some are short, some are long, and by 2020 there is scheduled to be a new one, the English Coast Path, which will eclipse the current longest one and become a behemoth of national trails, being the whole of the English coastline. So how did they come about? Well, after the Second World War, Britain was hit by rapid urban growth. There was much rebuilding to do and technology had advanced. People recognised the need to protect rural areas and defend things that made Britain special. As a result, laws were passed to create national parks, AONBs or areas of outstanding natural beauty, and long-distance footpaths known simply as national trails. These routes were devised by a government group with much consultation and long checks. They are created by committee and must follow strict guidelines. Anyone can link public footpaths together, and there are loads of them, but the shift from long distance path to national trail is a slow process. Criteria must be met and there must be a demand. There are no publicly available lists for these criteria. It is all done by government and voted upon much in the manner of the movie. I suppose the big difference though is cost and infrastructure. This here, the path I've been walking, is the Monarch's Way. It is a trail designed to mimic the journey Charles II went on to escape capture by the Cromwellian army after the Civil War. It is not, however, a national trail. What does this mean in practice? Well, the council doesn't pay for the path's maintenance any more than it would a regular public footpath, so there is limited funds for advertising and infrastructure. On a practical level, it means that there's limited facilities, few car parks, not much disabled access, and can be overgrown in parts. That's how it is. Oh, and poor signage. There's only a few really small ones, hardly noticeable, back there. The easiest way to tell the difference between a public footpath and a national trail is the sign. If it has an acorn on it, it's a national trail. If it has some fancy insignia, then it's not. Now, this video is getting too long already and there's so much more I could say, so I'll leave it there for now. And I'll revisit some of these topics in depth later on.